My name is Emily. I'm 28. My family treated me like I was invisible, while my brother Marcus, the so-called automotive genius and family golden boy, could do no wrong. I sacrificed my social life, my savings, and even my mental health, working double shifts and earning every promotion through pure grit, hoping one day they'd finally see my worth. But nothing prepared me for the moment when Marcus looked me dead in the eye at our family dinner table and said, "Face it, Emily, you're worthless. You'll never amount to anything." What would you have done if your own brother said that to you? Growing up in suburban Detroit, Michigan, our house was basically a shrine to Marcus and his automotive obsessions. My parents, Linda and Robert Chen, owned a small import business, and from the moment Marcus turned 16, everything revolved around his car expertise and his dreams of building the ultimate collection. Meanwhile, I was the practical one, the one who helped balance Mom's books every weekend, the one who stayed up late researching suppliers when Dad's business hit rough patches. But to them, it was never enough. I'll never forget my high school graduation day. I had earned a full academic scholarship to University of Michigan for business administration, something that should have made any parent proud. But when relatives asked about my achievement, Dad would barely nod and then immediately pivot. "Wait until you see Marcus's new Mustang modification. Show them the engine bay, son." Mom would beam with pride as Marcus popped the hood, while my scholarship letter sat forgotten on the kitchen counter. The pattern continued through college. Every semester, I made Dean's List. Marcus would roll up in some new project car, and suddenly the family dinner conversation became a 2-hour dissertation on his latest purchase. "Emily's doing fine in school," Mom would say dismissively when asked, "but Marcus just got this incredible deal on a 1967 Camaro. Tell them what you paid for it, honey." Marcus had this way of making every accomplishment of mine seem trivial. When I landed my first internship at a marketing firm, he smirked and said, "Marketing, huh? Basically lying to people for money. I'm building something real with my hands." When I graduated and got hired immediately at a Fortune 500 company, his response was, "Corporate drone work. Must be nice to have such low ambitions." Their words cut deep because I desperately wanted their approval. I was working 60-hour weeks, climbing the corporate ladder, saving every penny, but in their eyes, I was just background noise to Marcus's automotive symphony. Family gatherings became torture sessions where I'd sit quietly while everyone admired his latest acquisition, discussing torque specifications and quarter-mile times like they were discussing world peace. 3 years ago, I had the opportunity of a lifetime. A senior marketing director position opened up at Tesla's Michigan operations hub, offering a $120,000 salary plus stock options that could have been worth hundreds of thousands. The job interview went perfectly, and they verbally offered me the position, asking me to start within 2 weeks. It was my ticket to independence, respect, and financial freedom. But then Dad's import business hit a catastrophic snag. A major shipment from South Korea got held up in customs due to paperwork errors, and suddenly they owed $85,000 in storage fees and penalties. The business was about to collapse. Mom called me crying, her voice cracking as she said, "Emily, we're going to lose everything. Your father won't admit it, but we need help. You're the only one who understands business." So I made the hardest decision of my life. I called Tesla and explained I couldn't take the position due to a family emergency. Instead, I took a local marketing job in Detroit for $65,000, nearly half what Tesla was offering, and poured my signing bonus and savings into Dad's business. I spent nights and weekends restructuring their supplier contract, negotiating with creditors, and implementing proper inventory management systems. Within 6 months, I had not only saved their business, but increased their profit margins by 40%. I was the one who secured their biggest contract with a major automotive parts distributor. I was the one who streamlined their operations and brought them into the digital age with proper accounting software and online ordering systems. But when the extended family asked how the business recovered, Dad would say, "Well, Marcus helped us understand the automotive market better, and Emily did some paperwork." Mom would nod enthusiastically, adding, "Marcus has such great instincts for what car enthusiasts want." I watched Marcus buy his third project car, money that only existed because I had sacrificed my dream job and financial future. He never once acknowledged what I had done for the family business that was now subsidizing his hobby. The pattern of dismissal became routine. Every month, I was handling more of the business operations, effectively working 2 full-time jobs, my marketing position during the day and managing the family business in evenings and weekends. I created their entire digital marketing strategy, designed their website, managed their social media presence, and handled all customer service issues. Meanwhile, Marcus would roll into the office around noon, spend an hour giving unsolicited advice about inventory choices, then disappear to work on his car. But somehow, he was always the one getting credit for understanding the automotive industry. My friend Sarah from college would visit occasionally, and she'd watch these family dynamics with growing concern. One evening, As we sat in my tiny apartment while I worked on Dad's quarterly reports, she shook her head and said, they're using you. Marcus gets all the praise while you do all the work. This isn't normal family dynamics. I'd brush off her concerns, telling myself that family meant sacrifice, that eventually they'd recognize my contributions. I kept thinking that maybe at the next family gathering, Dad would publicly thank me for saving the business, or Mom would brag about my marketing skills to her friends, but it never came. Instead, I'd watch Marcus arrive at family dinners in his latest acquisition, a 1969 Dodge Charger or a modified Subaru WRX, while I pulled up in my sensible 2015 Honda Civic, the same car I'd been driving since college because every spare dollar went to supporting the family business or building my emergency fund. The golden child treatment never wavered. When Marcus decided to get his real estate license, Dad immediately offered to co-sign a loan for him to flip houses. When I mentioned I was interested in getting my MBA, Mom sighed and said, "More school, Emily. Don't you think you should focus on practical things?" Late at night, I'd calculated that I had invested over $90,000 of my own money and countless hours into keeping their business afloat, while Marcus had received roughly the same amount in direct financial support for his various projects, plus the indirect subsidy of living at home rent-free until he was 26. Everything came to a head 6 months ago when Marcus announced he was ready to buy his dream car, a brand new 2024 Porsche 911 Turbo S, priced at $215,000. He had been talking about this specific car for 3 years, showing us magazine articles, watching YouTube reviews, even visiting the dealership monthly to sit in the display model. The family dinner conversation became consumed with Marcus's car search. He had spreadsheets comparing different trim levels, paint colors, and option packages. Dad was helping him research financing options, while Mom researched insurance costs and maintenance schedules. The entire family was mobilized around Marcus's automotive dream. "This is it," Marcus declared, spreading out brochures across the dining room table. "The Porsche 911 Turbo S in Miami blue with the Sport Chrono package. It's going to be absolutely perfect." I was genuinely happy for him initially. Despite everything, he was my brother, and I wanted him to achieve his dreams. I even offered to help him negotiate the price, given my business experience, but Marcus just laughed condescendingly. "Emily, buying a car isn't like buying office supplies. This requires understanding performance specs, resale values, market dynamics. It's not really your area of expertise." Dad nodded approvingly. "Marcus has been studying this for years. He knows exactly what he wants." What none of them knew was that I had been quietly building my investment portfolio for the past 5 years. Every bonus, every raise, every tax refund went into a diversified mix of index funds, real estate investment trusts, and individual stocks. While they assumed I was just getting by on my salary, I had actually accumulated nearly $300,000 in liquid assets. I had initially planned to use this money for a down payment on my own house, maybe start my own marketing consultancy, and build the independent life I had always dreamed of. But Marcus's dismissive attitude and the family's continued blind spot about my capabilities planted a different seed in my mind. Marcus's car shopping process became the family's primary entertainment. Every weekend, he'd drag Dad to different dealerships, test driving various Porsches, and lecturing everyone about the superiority of German engineering. He'd come home with stories about how the sales managers respected his automotive knowledge, how other customers would ask him for advice, how he was practically an expert on the 911 platform. But then the complications started. His credit score wasn't quite high enough for the best financing rates. His income as a part-time real estate agent wasn't sufficient for the loan amount he needed. The dealership required a larger down payment than he had saved. Naturally, the family rallied to solve Marcus's problem. Dad offered to co-sign the loan. Mom suggested Marcus could live at home for another year to save money. They even discussed selling some of the business equipment I had helped them purchase to free up cash for Marcus's down payment. During these discussions, I tried to offer practical advice. "Marcus, maybe consider a slightly used model. You could save $50,000 and get essentially the same car. Or, have you thought about waiting another year to build up your credit score and saving?" But Marcus would dismiss every suggestion with increasing hostility. "Emily, you don't understand. This isn't just transportation, it's an investment. Classic sports cars always appreciate in value." When I pointed out that a brand new car depreciates the moment you drive it off the lot, he rolled his eyes. "That's typical accountant thinking. You're so focused on spreadsheets that you miss the bigger picture." The tension escalated during a family barbecue when our cousin Jake asked about my career. I had just received a promotion to senior marketing manager, which came with a $15,000 raise and additional stock options. But before I could answer, Marcus interrupted. "Emily's doing okay in her little corporate job," he said, flipping burgers with theatrical flair. "But she's not really building anything lasting. Just pushing papers around, helping rich people get richer. Meanwhile, I'm building real wealth through real estate and car investments." Dad chuckled approvingly. "Marcus has such an entrepreneurial spirit. Emily's always been more of a safety first type." I felt my face burning, but I stayed quiet. Jake, sensing the tension, tried to redirect. But Emily, didn't you save your parents' business? That seems pretty entrepreneurial. Marcus didn't even pause. Oh, she helped with some bookkeeping stuff, but Dad and I made the real strategic decisions about inventory and market positioning. That was a complete lie. I had personally negotiated every major contract, restructured their entire supply chain, and implemented the marketing strategies that tripled their online sales. But correcting him in front of the extended family would just create more drama. Sarah, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke up. Emily, didn't you turn down that Tesla job to help your family? That seems like a pretty big sacrifice. The entire patio went silent. I had never told my parents exactly what I had given up to save their business. Marcus looked confused, clearly not knowing about the Tesla opportunity. Mom broke the silence with nervous laughter. Well, Emily's always been very dedicated to family, but that Tesla job probably wouldn't have worked out anyway. Those tech companies are so unstable. The final confrontation happened 3 weeks later at our monthly family dinner. Marcus had just returned from another unsuccessful attempt to secure financing for his dream Porsche. He was frustrated, angry, and looking for someone to blame. These dealership finance managers don't know what they're talking about, he ranted, stabbing his meatloaf with unnecessary force. They're treating me like some kind of credit risk when I'm obviously a serious buyer who understands the market. Dad shook his head sympathetically. The car industry just doesn't appreciate knowledgeable customers anymore, I suggested, as gently as possible. Marcus, maybe if you spent less on modifications for your current cars, you could save more for the down payment. That's when Marcus exploded. He slammed his fork down, his face turning red with rage. You know what, Emily? I am so sick of your negative attitude. Every conversation, every family gathering, you're always trying to bring down my dreams with your pessimistic bean counter mentality. The dining room went deadly quiet. Mom put down her water glass. Dad stopped chewing. Marcus wasn't finished. He leaned forward, pointing his finger directly at me. You've never taken a real risk in your entire life. You've never built anything, never created anything, never accomplished anything meaningful. You're just a corporate drone who thinks success means having a steady paycheck and a good credit score. I tried to respond calmly. Marcus, I'm not trying to discourage you. I'm just suggesting— No, he shouted, cutting me off. You're jealous because I have passion. I have vision. I have ambition. You're stuck in your little cubicle, pushing papers, living your safe little life, and you can't stand that I'm doing something exciting. The room was so silent, I could hear the kitchen clock ticking. Mom and Dad exchanged glances but said nothing. They weren't going to defend me. Marcus stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. He looked down at me with pure contempt and in a voice dripping with venom, delivered the words that changed everything. Face it, Emily, you're worthless. You'll never amount to anything because you're too scared to take real risks. You're just a boring, mediocre person who will live a boring, mediocre life. The best thing you could do for this family is accept that you'll never be special and stop trying to drag the rest of us down to your level. The silence that followed felt like an eternity. I could feel my parents' eyes on me, waiting for my response, but not rushing to my defense. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. I stood up slowly, grabbed my purse, and looked Marcus directly in the eye. You know what, Marcus? You're absolutely right. I am boring and mediocre and worthless. I paused, letting the sarcasm sink in. But I guess we'll see about that, won't we? I walked out without saying goodbye to my parents, got in my sensible Honda Civic, and drove home with tears of rage streaming down my face. But by the time I reached my apartment, the tears had stopped and a cold, calculating resolve had taken their place. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, analyzing my financial situation with the precision of a military strategist. I had $298,000 in liquid investments, a credit score of 785, and absolutely zero patience for Marcus's bullshit anymore. I started researching luxury car dealerships in the Detroit metro area. I wasn't just looking at prices and inventory. I was looking at business models, profit margins, franchise opportunities, and ownership structures. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years and spent the entire day visiting dealerships, not as a customer, but as a potential business partner. I had meetings with general managers, finance directors, and even reached out to some franchise owners. What I discovered was fascinating. The luxury car market in Detroit was dominated by a few major players, but there were opportunities for well-capitalized independent dealers, especially for high-end sports cars and exotic vehicles. By the end of the week, I had identified my target, Premier Motor Group, a boutique dealership specializing in Porsche, Ferrari, and Lamborghini. The owner, a 67-year-old named Frank Castellano, was looking to retire and had been quietly shopping the business to potential buyers. The dealership was profitable, well located, and had exclusive relationships with all the major luxury brands. More importantly, it was the exact dealership where Marcus had been doing all his window shopping and test drives for the past 3 years. I spent the next 2 weeks conducting due diligence like a corporate acquisition specialist. I reviewed 3 years of financial statements, analyzed their customer database, evaluated their service department profitability, and even hired a commercial commercial inspector to assess the property. Frank was impressed by my thoroughness and business acumen. Most people who want to buy car dealerships are car guys who think it's going to be fun, he told me over lunch. You're approaching this like a real business investment. I respect that. Meanwhile, my family had no idea what I was planning. Marcus continued his futile attempts to secure financing, growing increasingly frustrated and bitter. Mom would call me occasionally, trying to smooth over the dinner incident without actually addressing what Marcus had said. You know how your brother gets when he's stressed, she'd say diplomatically. He didn't really mean those things about you being worthless, but I knew he did mean it, and more importantly, I knew my parents believed it too, or they would have defended me that night. 3 weeks after Marcus called me worthless, I sat across from Frank Castellano in his dealership office, signing the papers to purchase Premier Motor Group for $485,000. I had liquidated my entire investment portfolio, taken out a business loan, and even borrowed against my 401k to make it happen. You sure about this, Emily? Frank asked as I signed the final document. The car business can be brutal, especially for someone without automotive experience. I looked around the showroom floor where a pristine Miami blue Porsche 911 Turbo S sat under the spotlight, the exact same car Marcus had been obsessing over for 3 years. I'm absolutely certain, Frank. I've got big plans for this place. The transition period was intense. Frank agreed to stay on for 3 months to help me learn the business, introduce me to key suppliers, and train me on the specific challenges of luxury car sales. I discovered that running a dealership was actually very similar to my corporate marketing experience. It was all about understanding customer psychology, managing inventory, and building relationships. I also learned that Marcus had been a running joke among the sales staff. Oh, the dreamer with the Civic, one of the salesmen laughed when I mentioned his name. He comes in every few weeks to sit in cars he can't afford and lecture us about German engineering. We call guys like him tire kickers. Within my first month, I had implemented new marketing strategies, upgraded their digital presence, and negotiated better financing partnership. My corporate experience in customer relationship management and data analysis gave me insight that traditional car dealers often miss, but the real satisfaction came from a much simpler source. Every morning, I would unlock the doors to my own business, walk past that Miami blue Porsche, and remember exactly why I was doing this. I didn't tell my family about the acquisition immediately. As far as they knew, I was still working my corporate marketing job and living my boring, mediocre life. I wanted to wait for the perfect moment to reveal my new reality. That moment came sooner than expected. 2 months after I bought the dealership, Marcus finally qualified for a loan with a subprime lender at 8.9% interest. He was ecstatic, calling everyone in the family to announce that he was finally ready to buy his dream car. I'm going to Premier Motor Group tomorrow, he announced during our weekly family phone call. They have the exact 911 I want, and I'm pre-approved for the full amount. This is it. I'm finally getting my Porsche. I listened to his excitement with a calm smile. That's great, Marcus. I'm sure you'll love it. What Marcus didn't know was that I had been tracking his visits to the dealership through our customer management system. I knew exactly which car he wanted, what options he preferred, and even which salesperson he liked working with. The next morning, I arrived at the dealership early and had a conversation with Tony, the senior salesman who usually handled Marcus. When Marcus Chen comes in today, I told him, make sure he's directed to my office first. Tell him the new owner wants to meet with all potential high-value customers personally. Tony looked confused but nodded. Sure thing, Emily. But isn't this the guy who's been coming in for years without ever buying anything? Trust me, I said. Today is going to be different. At 11:30 a.m., I was reviewing inventory reports when Tony knocked on my office door. Emily, there's a Marcus Chen here to see you. He seems confused. Send him in. Marcus walked into my office looking around with obvious bewilderment. He clearly hadn't expected the new owner to be a woman, let alone someone close to his age. When his eyes finally focused on me sitting behind the mahogany desk, his expression went through a remarkable transformation. Confusion, recognition, shock, and finally, disbelief. Emily, he stammered. Why are you? I gestured to the chair across from my desk. Please, have a seat, Marcus. I understand you're interested in purchasing a 2024 Porsche 911 Turbo S in Miami blue with a Sport Chrono package. He remained standing, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. You work here now? I don't work here, Mark. I picked up the deed of sale from my desk and placed it where he could see it. I own here. I am Premier Motor Group. The color drained from his face. He finally sat down heavily, like someone had cut his strings. This is impossible, he whispered. How could you? Where did you get the money to? This makes no sense. I leaned back in my leather chair, enjoying this moment more than I probably should have. Remember what you told me 3 weeks ago, Marcus, about how I'm worthless and mediocre and will never amount to anything because I'm too scared to take real risks? He was staring at me like I had grown a second head. Well, I continued, buying a luxury car dealership with my life savings seemed like a pretty big risk. But you're the automotive expert, so maybe you can tell me if I made a good investment. Marcus started to speak several times, but couldn't seem to form words. Finally, he managed, I don't understand. You work in marketing. You drive a Honda Civic. You've never even shown interest in in cars, you're right, I agreed. I'm not interested in cars as toys or status symbols, but I'm very interested in cars as business assets. This dealership generates about $2.8 million in annual revenue with a 12% profit margin. The real estate alone is worth $1.2 million, and the customer loyalty metrics are exceptional. People who buy luxury cars tend to come back for service, upgrades, and future purchases. I could see him trying to process this information, his car guy brain conflicting with his perception of his boring little sister. Now, I said, opening his customer file on my computer, I see you've been approved for financing at 8.9% interest with a $35,000 down payment. Unfortunately, that particular Porsche has a few additional options that weren't included in your original quote. The final price is actually $221,847 plus taxes and fees. Marcus's eyes went wide. What additional options? I specifically configured this car exactly how I wanted it. I turned my monitor so he could see the itemized breakdown. Well, there's the paint protection film, the ceramic coating, the extended warranty, the theft protection system, and our premium delivery preparation package, all standards for vehicles in this price range. These were all optional add-ons that could be waived, but Marcus didn't know that, and technically, I wasn't lying. They were standard for customers who wanted them. This is insane, he said, his voice rising. You're trying to rip me off. Marcus, I said calmly, I'm running a business. These are fair market prices for premium services. If you don't feel comfortable with the total investment, there are certainly other dealerships you could visit, but we both knew there weren't. Premier Motor Group had the only Miami Blue 911 Turbo S with his exact specifications within 200 miles. He had already put down a deposit and had his heart set on this specific car. The negotiation took 3 hours. Marcus tried every tactic he could think of, appealing to family loyalty, arguing about the fairness of the add-ons, even attempting to go over my head to speak with the real owner. I'm sorry, sir, Tony told him with a straight face, but Ms. Chen is the owner and final decision maker for all sales in this price range. Eventually, Marcus realized he had no leverage. He wanted the car, I had the car, and I controlled the terms of the sale. He signed all the paperwork, including the extended warranty and service packages, bringing his total cost to $247,000. As he was completing the final financing documents, he looked up at me with something that might have been respect or might have been fear. Why? He asked quietly. Why did you do this? I considered giving him a long speech about years of disrespect, about being underestimated, about proving my worth, but instead, I kept it simple. Because I could, Marcus. Because when someone tells you that you're worthless and will never amount to anything, you have two choices. Believe them or prove them wrong. He nodded slowly. Are you going to tell mom and dad? That depends, I said. Are you going to keep telling people that I'm a boring, mediocre failure who pushes papers for a living? He shook his head quickly. No, I was wrong about that, obviously. Good. Then there's no reason for this to be anything more than a normal business transaction between two adults. 3 days later, Marcus picked up his Porsche. I made sure to be there for the delivery, watching from my office window as Tony walked him through all the features and handed over the keys. Marcus looked happy, but also subdued. He kept glancing toward the office building, knowing I was watching. As he drove off in his dream car, I felt a satisfaction that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with self-respect. I had built something. I had taken a risk. I had proven that the boring, mediocre, worthless sister could accomplish things that shocked everyone who thought they knew her. 6 months later, Premier Motor Group had its best quarter in company history. I had successfully negotiated exclusive partnerships with 2 additional luxury brands, expanded our service department, and increased our profit margins by 18%. Marcus still comes in for regular service appointments. Our interactions are polite, professional, and respectful. He never talks down to me anymore, and he's never again suggested that I'm not capable of understanding complex business decisions. But more importantly, I learned something about myself. I wasn't worthless. I was just undervalued by people who couldn't see past their own assumptions. Sometimes the biggest risk isn't buying a business or making a career change. It's believing in your own worth when everyone around you refuses to see it. The key lesson I learned was that other people's opinions of you only have the power you give them. For years, I let Marcus's dismissiveness and my parents' favoritism define how I saw myself. I was so focused on earning their respect that I forgot to respect myself. Buying that dealership wasn't really about getting revenge on Marcus. It was about proving to myself that I was capable of more than anyone imagined, including me. The moment I stopped caring about their approval and started focusing on my own goals, everything changed. Now I wake up every morning as the owner of a successful business, employing 12 people, contributing to my community's economy, and building wealth that's entirely my own. I'm not worthless, mediocre, or boring. I'm strategic, determined, and successful on my own terms. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had someone tell you that you'll never amount to anything? How did you handle it? Did you let their words define you, or did you use them as motivation to prove them wrong? And honestly, if you were in my position, would you have bought the dealership just to make that point? Was it worth the financial risk, or should I have just walked away and found success somewhere else? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'm genuinely curious to hear different perspectives on this whole situation. Because at the end of the day, the best revenge isn't proving someone wrong about you. It's proving yourself right, and sometimes that's worth every penny you invest in making it happen. Hit that like button if you've ever been underestimated by family, and subscribe for more stories about turning setbacks into comebacks. Trust me, this is just the beginning of what happens when you stop letting other people's limitations become your own.